Hey folks, I'm Chuck Black. We're doing quokka-prime from scratch, and we begin today with our lessons on service monitoring. There will be a few lessons. This first one is an overview where we look at the code from quokka-prime, and we're going to move it over into our quokka-prime from scratch area. Now, be advised as we go through these lessons, we'll be touching on a few things, including object-oriented programming, concurrency, and even passing parameters to a Python program when you run it. So that will be in the following lessons. So let's get started. So before we begin, let's remind ourselves where we are. This is where we are right now, or where we're almost are. We have implemented this host monitor and host display. We've also implemented the device monitor and the device display. Just for a little bit of reference, this is where we were when we started. In fact, let me go back one more. When we started, we were implementing the host monitor and display as a separate application with no web service. Then we added this Flask web service that gave us a RESTful API storing the data in the web service itself, and we separated the host display and the host monitor. Then we did device monitor and device display, and what we're going to do next is service monitor and service display. Just as a peek ahead, what we will be doing, we'll be taking the stuff out of here where it probably shouldn't live and putting it into database. And so we will be implementing the database. If we do continue with this, then I'll show you a little bit about how to implement a user interface that would be a browser-based user interface. We already have these terminal-based user interfaces. And if we get a little bit further with this, depending on how far we decide to go, we will look at doing these port scan, packet capture, traceroute, etc., using messaging and adding that stuff to the product. But for right now, what we're doing is we're going to be doing service monitor and service display. So another thing I need to mention about this lesson is the following. We're going to be talking about service monitoring, and within this application, I'm going to be implementing it using object-oriented programming. That means I'll be defining classes, I'll be instantiating objects, I'm going to be using inheritance, there will be methods, there will be overloading, all of this stuff that is kind of part and parcel of object-oriented programming we are going to be using. I'm not going to be spending the lesson talking about object-oriented programming and what it is. If you are interested in that, the good news is that I have a number of lessons already that you can examine on this topic. If you look here, week 35, the one above what I'm pointing at right now, object-oriented programming is an overview. Then I'm going to be going into week 36 where I'm going to be defining a class for communication, and then the last thing I'm going to do is I'm going to talk about subclasses and things of that nature. So I will spend like 50 minutes or so on each one of these talking about it. If you want to learn about it and you haven't, that's the place that I would go. But for this particular session, what we're going to be doing is talking about the implementation that we are going to be doing in quokka-prime. So remember, what we're doing is we're going to be building this service monitoring code. It shows one box here, but actually there are going to be two different files, two different Python modules that we are going to be using. The first one is servicemonitor.py. That's the thing that we're going to run from the command line, and that has stuff in it that you will be familiar with. It has a main piece of code. It has a while loop that we go through over and over again. We're going to get services, and here's some concurrency. We're going to actually leave this concurrency in, so by the time that we're done talking about service monitoring, you'll know not only about just service monitoring in general, but also object-oriented programming and concurrency. But this is the loop here. This is the main program. So I've got update service, I've got discovery, and I've got get services. So we've got that. For the implementation of the monitoring piece, I've created a class called service monitor, and that is in this file that is, notice the capitalization here, capital S, capital M, we call that camel case, and that is what we use for files that are doing object-oriented stuff. It's just a convention. It's not a requirement, but here's my class service monitor. And then I have subclasses called HTTP monitor, DNS monitor. If I keep going down here, there's NTP monitor, and there's an ICMP monitor. So we're going to look at that in more detail, but I wanted you to see in general what that is. Now, the other thing that I'll point out is this, and when I go back to the service monitor and I look up here at the top, there's going to be this stuff. So I'm actually going to be demonstrating the use of arguments that get passed in to the service monitor program. So we're going to be bundling in a few new things as we go through this, but that's the general overview of this code. I mentioned I'm going to use those two files exactly as they are. At least I'm going to attempt to do so. So let me show you how I can do that. This is just a Linux thing. You probably know how to do this. Here I am in quokka-prime Scratch. The other stuff is in quokka-prime. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to find out where I am. I want to go down to monitors. So here I'm in monitors. I have my device monitor and my host monitor. What I'm going to do is I'm going to copy from quokka-prime. Let me make this bigger because the actual command is going to get kind of long. So I'm going to copy from, and I'm going to go back to my home directory, quokka-prime/monitors, and I'm going to service, let's see, service underscore monitor.py, and I'm going to copy it to right here. And it should have done that by now. So if I look, I have service monitor. You can see that right here. So now I have that. Let me go grab the other one, which is the capital S. So let me do the up arrow and go back here. And I am going to change this to capital S, service monitor, but I got extra.py, so let's get rid of that. Service monitor.py, copy that to here, do an ls, and lo and behold, I have both service monitor and service. Now I'm going to need to do some modification of that stuff, so let's do that next. Okay, so I've added the files, as you can see, and here in PyCharm, you can see that PyCharm became aware of them as well, and it's put them in the correct folder here, the directory monitors where I placed them. It's marked them as red because they exist in the directory, but they haven't been added to Git. Now I am using Git because I'm storing everything and making it available to you guys. You may not be using Git, in which case this wouldn't be an issue for you, but since it is, I'm going to go ahead. You can see down here at the bottom right that PyCharm is saying, you know what, if you add files, then I can add them to Git. I can always remove them. I can do them myself if I wanted to. We're not really talking about Git in any great detail at this point in time, so I'm just going to say always add them. And now you can see that they are both green, so they've been added. They're new files. They need to be committed and then pushed, but that's just letting me know that information. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to get rid of these ones. Remember, these were the ones, if I hover over this, if you see at the very beginning of that directory path, it says quokka-prime. I don't want to be looking at that one. I want to look at the versions that are part of quokka-prime from scratch. If I hover over this, you can see in the path to the file, it's quokka-prime scratch at the very beginning, and the same is hopefully true for service monitor. So let's look here. Do I have anything that might be of issue? This is actually looking like it might actually run. Oh, well, look at this. This is a problem. That shouldn't say that. It says it in my quokka-prime for real, but that should say service. In fact, what I should probably do right here is I should do a Control F and look for the word host. And there's localhost, host IP address. Okay, that looks good. I'm going to actually change that to capital H. See if there's a capital H anywhere. Oh, it's doing case insensitive. So I don't have host anywhere else, so we're probably pretty good. This looks like the right endpoint. I'll be doing localhost services. That's what my quokka-prime server, my endpoint is services. So that seems like that would possibly be okay. So it's looking for services.yaml. So that's a file that I need to copy from where it is and put it into this directory. So let's go back and do that using our terminal. And that's not the terminal that I wanted. Let's see. Here's the terminal that I wanted. This is the one that I was using before. And I am going to say, I want you to copy from service monitor. Let's see if there's something with S. I'm going to hit tab. And it says, I have something called services.yaml. And I want to copy that to right here as well. So it has done that now. And I'm going to minimize that. It looks like it hasn't been detected yet in this by PyCharm. Up there it is. And it added it automatically. So it's got services.yaml. So this might actually work. I think the next thing that we'll do is we'll give it a shot and see what happens when I try to run it. So I need to go to my service monitor, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to use my Control R again, and I'm going to change 5001 to 5000. Let's see, there's only one situation. And this is kind of nice. I'm setting up my thing called Quokka to be set to this by default, so I don't have to change it all over the place. So I've made that change, and let's run it and see what happens. Now I don't have to restart this. It's been waiting on that since, it's running correctly. The only change I made was to my server code. So let's clear this and let's run it. Hey, look at that. Can you see this? It seems to be running okay. So my service ping failed. That's all right. That's the system that's not up. Successfully updated service status. Updating service status. Yeah, looks like it might be working. You see all these 204s. 204 is a response code that says everything was successful. I'm not returning any data. And here you can see I'm doing my get of the services, and that was successful as well. So it looks like initially anyway, it is running. So we've got our stuff going. Hey, that's cool. So that's it for this lesson on session monitoring, the overview. We've looked at the code that we're using in general to do the monitoring, and we actually moved it over and got it to run. So in future episodes, we'll be looking at actual object-oriented stuff, how the monitoring is done, and concurrency, and also passing parameters. So stay tuned. If you have any questions, let me know. Thanks. Hey, thanks for watching this episode on quokka-prime from scratch. I'm Chuck Black. If you do have questions or comments, feel free to leave a message with this video. I'm also on Twitter at Chuck A. Black. If you want to send email with a question, comment, or just to say hi, the email address you can reach me at is python.52.weeks@gmail.com. Also, remember to subscribe to this channel. I hope these lessons are helping you to achieve your goals towards becoming a real software developer. So long for now, and see you at the next episode.